What's up, guys? Illuminostic, and I think I just realized that we are actually going to finish uh, this degree 28 today or at the next stream. Pretty crazy stuff. And so where we left off, we were talking about the interplay of antinomies, which is a very difficult subject for people, I think. I think it's a deep-seated human desire that we should be evolving towards some type of perfection. And it is true that it's possible. But much more likely is that there will always be on the plane where the universe exists, the dualistic world, that it will be a perfect interplay of light and darkness, and all of the metaphorical manifestations of light and darkness. Come on, come on, come on. All right, I had to get rid of the dogs so that I can concentrate sufficiently to deliver this stuff. So, yeah, I don't think that day will ever come. I don't think it's ever supposed to come. It's not the point at all. There may be some other phase of our existence in a non-dualistic version of the universe, but for now and forever, as far as this plane of existence is concerned, it will always be life and death. And one of the great secrets of alchemy that I almost don't even want to say this out loud, because it really is one of the great secrets of alchemy. And the truth of scientific illuminism, right? The idea that you can learn about all of the non-physical or spiritual or deepest mechanisms of the universe by observation of physical phenomena, that is the real power of alchemy. I mean, it's one of the many facets of the real power of alchemy. But this idea that it is good that creates evil and evil that creates good is proven in the vial. And that is, almost unspeakably powerful knowledge and frightening knowledge. And it's one of the secrets of the mysteries that most people are not inclined to accept. It's, in a way, almost too horrible to believe. But, it's also really, 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 really obvious if you just look around the world and you look at what all the great teachers have said. The Buddha talked about this. St. John of the Cross talked about this. Anybody that is advanced enough in their intelligence and looks at this stuff long enough comes to this conclusion, because it's no different than observing any other system. It doesn't matter whether it's a Japanese biologist or an English biologist that is observing genetic variability in a species. They will come to the same conclusions because it's a real thing that they're observing. It's that simple. And so for now, we are engaged in the business of navigating a world that is predicated on such a preposterous proposition. But, you start with the blackening, the putrefaction of the prima materia before you are able to develop the gold, and only because of the blackening and putrefaction. The proof is in the pudding. Proof is in the pudding, even. So, with that in mind, alchemy has its symbolic triad of salt, sulfur, and mercury, man consisting, according to the Hermetic philosophers, of body, soul, and spirit. The dove, the raven, and the phoenix, the circle, the square, and the triangle. And these are all striking symbols of good and evil, light and darkness, and the beauty resulting from the equilibrium of the two. If you would understand the true secrets of alchemy, you must understand the works of the masters with patience and assiduity. Every word is often an enigma, and to him who reads in haste, the whole will seem absurd. Even when they seem to teach that the great work is the purification of the soul, and so to deal only with morals, they most conceal their meaning and deceive all but initiates. Yod is termed in the Kabbalah the Apophix, workman of the deity. It is, says the Portocolorum, single and primal, like one, which is the first among numbers, and like a point, the first above and before all bodies. Moved lengthwise, it produces a line. The point produces a line, which is vowel, and this moved sideways produces a superficies, which is dalet. Thus, vowel becomes dalet, for movement tends from right to left, and all communication is from above to below. The plenitude of Yod, that is, the name of this letter, spelled Y-O-D. Vowel, which represents 6, and dalet 4 are 10, like Yod, their principle. This is getting a little bit technical. I wish I had a visual for you guys so you could kind of follow this better. But he's talking about how the development of the letters in Hebrew reflects the developmental processes of the universe, and how you can see the sort of like divine influence or manifestation in the way that the letters form words, because if you write out the pronunciation of the Yod, which by the way looks just like a spermatozoa, the numerical value is 10. And you can even see the spermatozoa of the Y becoming the door of Dalet. And so this is the first primordial letter in what is happening. Y enters into 0, the O, and then it becomes, then it goes through the door, which is a vagina. So the whole process of replication, as we find it in the biological organisms, is manifested in the logic and the structure of the Hebrew alphabet. Yod, says the Sephira de Zeniutha, is the symbol of wisdom and of the Father. The principle called Father, says the Idra Sutta, is comprehended in Yod and flows downward from the holy influence, wherefore Yod is the most occult of all the letters. For he is the beginning and end of all things. The supernal wisdom is Yod, and all things are included in Yod, who is therefore called Father of fathers, or the generator of the universal. The principle of all things is called the house of all things, wherefore Yod is the beginning and end of all things. As it is written, Thou hast made all things in wisdom. For the all is termed wisdom, and in it the all is contained, and the summary of all things is the holy name, Yod-He, Vav-He. Yod, says the Sifra de Zeniuta, Zeniuta, I don't know, signifying the Father, approaches the letter He, which is the mother. Yod approaches the breath, which is the mother, and by the combination of these two is denoted the luminous influence wherewith Bina is imbued by the supernal wisdom. So the Yod descends into Keter and illuminates it, and then that potential flows forth and illuminates wisdom, which flows forth and illuminates intelligence, which flows down and harmonizes, and then expands outward to the sides to create chesed and had, glory and mercy on opposing sides, and so forth. This is probably an interesting time to mention something else that I'm going to talk about this in a public stream probably tonight or soon, but there is this tremendous idea that is building, that has existed, I guess, actually, for thousands of years, but is taking form in such a way that it can no longer be ignored or disputed. This idea of a universal mind, this idea of some sort of grand intelligence that is the sum total of all knowledge and awareness. That reality has made itself apparent in the form of light cones, which is the name that Michael Levin is giving for these collective intelligence units, I guess. So you could think of the base of this thing as, when you have a cell, inside of that cell, you have mechanisms, some of which seem to have some very basic operating intelligence, even smaller than the cell, components, eukaryotes and stuff, inside the cell. they have some function as in that of an organism. So it's some very basic level of intelligence. And that collective intelligence forms a cone, the objective of which is the management of the functionality of the cell. And so, that's the broad base. And then the tip of the light cone is the goal of the collective intelligence, the singular goal, which is to be a cell and operate in the context of all the other cells. And then you have a bigger light cone, which is the say the organs of a human being that collectively operate to produce a single result. So at the base you have heart, kidney, lungs, liver, spleen, brain, skin, all of these things. And at the point of the light cone you have the objective, which is to sustain life. And you can break these parts down all the way to an atom, which has also been determined to have some type of intelligence. Electrons, for example, know when they're being watched and when they are not. And so, we have bigger and bigger light cones, from the molecular to the cellular to the macrobiological, and so on and so forth. And then we have villages and cities and entire cultures, and then the human race. And the light cones become bigger and bigger and bigger, with goals that are also extended further and further out into the future. An individual cell has a goal of maybe 7 years because it's going to die in that amount of time. A civilization may have a goal of 200 or 300, 500,000 years, whatever it is. And then the collective of humanity, has a light cone that spans over millennia. And so if it's true that the basic awareness is generated at the photon layer, right? This is where consciousness arises. Everyone seems to be in agreement about that. It's the only presupposition that we have to make in this. All of the rest of it is fact. But still this bit of, it's not really speculation even, because there are only two things in the universe, light and nothing. There's light, that's it, in different forms, right? So there's really nowhere else to look besides light as the source of consciousness, period, end of story. There's no discussion, no argument to be had. That's it. So it's not really conjecture. I mean, it may sound like it, but if you think it through, it's an obvious fact. And so if you presuppose that the photon has a very basic level of awareness, and then you move up these light cones in larger and larger scale, you realize that just as a human being has some awareness of itself and but not necessarily experience of all of the intelligence of which it is composed, right? We have our own, sum total consciousness, but we don't really necessarily connect with the individual consciousness. Although I did drink enough San Pedro one time to become a photon and experienced it from the individual point of view of the photon, but that's not our normal, perspective. So the point being that as you scale up in these light cones, eventually you're going to come to the sum total at the very top of the cone, the eye atop the triangle, literally. And so it seems that we have basically proven through logic and reason the existence of something akin to God. It stands to reason if all of these smaller intelligences add up to an awareness, all of our cells and photons and all of the little intelligences that make up our system result in this overall awareness generated by the system. And so if you extend that out to the universe, then you have a conscious universe. Does that make sense? Should make sense. Pretty sure it makes sense. It's pretty crazy, man, but that's the solution to the question of God, I think. It's that simple. And then, that experience that I had of becoming a photon for a second, I think that it's, very possible that I doubt that this God creature has a direct awareness of every single component in it all the time. But I think it probably happens sometimes, just as it happened with me when I became a photon and was looking through the eyes sort of a photon. And so, Yod says the Sephira de Zeniutha, signifying the father, approaches the letter Hey which is the mother, and by combination of those two is denoted the luminous influence wherewith Bina is imbued by the supernal wisdom. In the name Yod-He Vav-He says the same, are included the mother, father, and microprosopus, their issue. He, impregnated by vow, produced microprosopus, or ser impin, anpin, sir anpin. Wisdom, Chakma, is the principle of all things. It is the father of fathers, and in it are the beginning and the end of all things. Microprosopus, the second universal, is the issue of wisdom, and the father, and Bina, the mother, and is composed of the 6 numerations. Geburah, Gedula, and Tiferet, Netzach, Had, and Yesod, is represented under the form of a man, and said to have at first occupied the place afterward filled by the world Bria of creation, but afterward to have been raised to the absolutic sphere and received wisdom, intelligence, and cognition from the supernal wisdom and intellectuality. And so I'm actually going to stop there for today because there is a really good description of that in another book that I have of how basically just what he was describing, the whole thing of the fairy tale where the prince descends and wakes up with a kiss the sleeping girl and that whole thing. I want to save it for when I have the other book to use as a companion to really effectively blow this thing up for you guys. So I hope that was great for you guys. We've dropped below 50 patrons again, so tell a neighbor, tell a friend. I'm really trying to build this channel up so that it's a more significant prop for my life and overcome the demonetization. We might break 100,000 views for the first time ever, but it's not affecting my revenue at all. So share the videos. That's really helpful, I think, with any friends that you think might appreciate this stuff. I definitely appreciate all of you and your support, and I will see you again, well, tonight, later, probably.